This episode of the SwitchCast is produced by Chris G., our honored patron and SwitchCat.
Hey everybody, I'm KC.
And I'm JV.
And this is the SwitchCast, the podcast for the Nintendo Switch semi-centennial? We'll go with that.
It's episode 50! Woo!
And that is my weird number description choice I'm going with for this one.
Semi-centennial. I'll take it. Sure,
yes.
KC.
And it's a big one. It's the first episode of 2018, so Happy New Year, JV.
Oh, Happy New Year as well. It's a very frigid one.
Yes, it is. We are, actually, what's it called? We're about to get hit by, what's that weird, they're calling it something really weird here. They're actually calling it a bomb cyclone.
That's new to me. That sounds super epic.
It's weird. Like, I feel like every year they invent a new word to make snowstorms sound more severe.
Yeah, well, it's getting more and more bad, and hurricane doesn't necessarily cover what they're trying to say.
I think last year we had winter vortex.
or you know what, it's just marketing.
Yeah, I think it's like, I'm getting the feeling that's what it is. And you know what? It scares the crud out of people, and it makes my life harder because I went shopping today and all the chicken and turkey and cold cuts I was trying to pick up were sold out because everyone's freaking out and preparing for the apocalypse. So thank you, bomb cyclone.
Yeah, that actually kind of happened over here in Texas. We had a supposed gas shortage when Hurricane Harvey hit Houston in that area. People were afraid, so that they loaded up on gas, and that kind of caused the gas shortage to happen in itself, and it was a debacle.
No, you should just become one of those doomsday preppers and just have a basement stockaded with food and gas for the imminent end of the world.
Yeah, I'm good, Casey.
Okay. On a cheery note, how was you just came back from your Christmassy vacation? Was that pretty sweet?
It was pretty cool. I actually really liked the bringing my Switch over to these vacations, since it's an opportunity to try to get the feelers out for how casual non-gamers feel about the Switch.
Oh, where did you go anyway? Any place interesting?
So I visited some family and friends in Florida.
Okay, so you're staying Christmassy. Got it.
Yeah, staying Christmassy. I tried to escape the frigid weathers of Texas, which is happening.
Okay.
But I got a lot of, casual relatives to play the Switch, and it was pretty interesting to see how people reacted to it.
Yeah, was it good reaction? They particular they were drawn to?
I copied your idea and got a bunch of people to play Snipper Clips together. And that was a really good experience. And, it's a good co-op game that everyone can join and figure out puzzles together with.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I did bring that back at the Thanksgiving, festivities, but I forgot that the game wasn't originally released with support for, Pro controllers.
Yeah?
It only had support for Joy-Con. So if you own two separate, whole Joy-Con controllers, you could play 4-player mode, but you couldn't do it with two Joy-Con halves plus a Pro controller or two. So I've never gotten to play 4-player. They released an update, actually right around that time. So now you can do that, but it was not available at the time. So I still haven't tried it 4-player yet, as much as I've been dying to get that experience out of it.
I actually like 4-player mode, especially for people who are casual players, because it is essentially a standard Snipper Clips puzzle, but it segments the tasks 4 ways. So if they're casual players, they only really have to worry about 1 or 2 aspects of the puzzle, and then they come together to form the solution. And I think that's a good way to bring non-gamers into the fold.
That is cool. No, I'm really hoping to get to try that sometime soon. But I will say, I picked the exact opposite location for my winter getaway last weekend, and it was the perfect gaming getaway I could imagine.
Ooh, okay, what is it?
Picture it. Monticello, 2017. A cabin in the woods with the missus and a couple of other good family members and my uncle and a couple of cousins. And it starts snowing up there. There's a hill for sledding. I brought up not only my Switch, but the SNES Classic that we just cracked open for Christmas.
Fancy.
And we spent hours taking turns on Super Mario World, playing Star Fox. I introduced Mario Odyssey to one of my cousins who got totally pulled into that. Like, he didn't even realize he'd been playing it for like 8 hours. I think the guy almost beat it actually in the weekend.
Nice.
It was just the perfect winter getaway. We even had plans originally to like go visit some sites in the area.
Oh yeah.
And we just totally got turned off of that. We were just like so
engrossed.
Yeah, just so engrossed, not just in the game. But like I said, we had our own little hill. We went sledding and we made a snowman. And then every time we got tired or cold, we just went back inside and we played some more Nintendo games. It was just perfect weekend of it was the most holiday feel I actually got, even more so than Christmas itself.
Dreaming of a Switch Christmas.
Yes, that's really what it was like. It was great. So
that's impressive. That sounds like an ideal picturesque Hallmark movie moment.
Yeah. And I got to beat Star Fox again, which is something that I was like, oh, do I still remember how to play these games? And like, it's just funny how every muscle memory comes
back. Yeah.
I didn't even think about when to use my bombs on certain guys. I just like my thumb hit the bomb button on instinct because it knew this is when you have to hit it hard, or here's when you have to dodge this guy. It was great.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's those Nintendo games that really just come back to you once you pick it up again.
Totes. Also in the meta, just want to point out, everybody, we have crossed yet another, it's just been a whole week of milestones. 5,000 Twitter followers. And it was almost at the crack of midnight on New Year's Eve. I realized this is something I wanted us to cross over, and I started snowballing from just the excitement and the people who were online just for the holiday. And I started just kind of promoting us a little bit extra hard that night, and I saw they were close to 5K, and then everyone just kind of, jumped on board. So thank you, everybody who started following us. And if you started listening to us since then, welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Yes. And lastly, we have almost 1,000 members in the Facebook group. So I think that is the next milestone we need to hit, and we need to roll that into a full 1K members on the Facebook group. So if you've been listening and you want more people to hang out with, or just want to see what we're talking about on there, definitely consider clicking the link to the Facebook group and joining the club.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Definitely want to see more of you guys active in the community, because everyone's been so great.
Yes, totally. But we have a lot to go through with the show today, so we won't waste too much more time. I'm just going to let you know we have a couple of great games to review. Of course, there's the news and some, coming attractions to talk about. But the main thing is we have prepared for you, at last, the SwitchCast Choice Awards. And JV and I have both picked our top 5 games of 2017. What really we have been personally enthralled by. This isn't necessarily just an objective evaluation of like what the best game is necessarily.
Right. You guys may absolutely disagree with our placement and our ordering, but this is all a personal, very subjective opinion of what we think are our top 5 games.
Right. And, considering we have very different tastes in general, it should be interesting to go through, and I'm sure the listeners kind of get the feeling of which one of us aligns with their tastes more, so you can take that into account when you hear the list. But of course, we have a list of what you guys have been voting for. I have tabulated the votes, and you, the listeners, have picked your top 5 Nindies and top 5 overall Nintendo Switch games, and I can't wait to talk about those. So why don't we roll straight into the game time and talk about what we've been playing, and let's move on.
Let's do it.
All right, game time. I have been extremely excited to hear about Brawlout, the game that you just teased us about a couple of weeks ago.
It's actually kind of been a big deal because of the platform and the genre that it is. So, if you guys don't know already, Brawlout is an indie platformer fighting game. So, it's kind of akin to games like Rivals of Aether, Brawlhalla, and of course, Super Smash Brothers.
It was good of you to look up some other games to compare it to, though. That's
no.
Yeah, good call-outs.
I'm a fan of this genre, so I've actually played quite a number of them. And Brawlout is definitely an inclusion into that to that genre, and I do want to see the platform fighting game genre expand. Though, yeah, it's definitely up in the air whether this is going to take off and be the next Smash.
All right, yeah, I have seen a lot of people talking about it. So, yeah, tell us, for those who let's just pretend for a moment the listeners don't know what a platform brawler is about, and just kind of lay out the specifics for this game specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys don't know what a platform fighter is, it's essentially a 2D/3D fighting game that prioritizes platforming and attacking mechanics within various platform stages, and dealing damage to the opponent, and then reaching a victory condition, usually knocking them out, sometimes dealing a certain number of damage. But it's not as rigid and focused on two characters as something like a traditional 2D fighting game, like Street Fighter. It's not quite like that. But in this case, Brawlout is very heavily platform fighting based, like Smash, and I definitely want to start talking about the theme of the game. Have you seen screenshots of this game at all, Casey?
have. I've seen all the crazy characters that are in there. They now these are all like original characters, or are they from something? So
all of these characters are original except for one inclusion, which is the Drifter from Hyper Light Drifter, which is really cool in itself. But overall, the theme is actually pretty generic. It has a bunch of random anthropomorphic animals and characters, and that takes up more of the character designs. And I'm looking at it, and I do feel like it kind of harkens to, those DreamWorks 3D movies.
Okay, I can see that.
If you can think about that, it does have that feel to it. And whether you like that or not is, it's personal taste. It definitely is diverse in the sense that each individual character has a theme, though the starting stages you get are pretty generic, and I think the character designs are, cool. They could be they can stand out a bit more.
Okay. What the four-armed Frogger guy doesn't feel like something new?
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, he has like a luchador mask on.
He's a luchador guy, but
he's a luchador Goro frog.
Luchadora frog. I dig it. To cover more about the actual gameplay of the game, I can tell right off the bat that this game was a bit more tuned for competitive multiplayer. Unlike in something like Smash, there aren't any random item drops or RNG-based stage hazards. So they really toned it down, and the primary focus of the game is the actual fighting, which I like. Which I think that's something that is a really good direction to take for these.
Does it use the same kind of controls? Is it very easy to learn all the moves for your character?
Yeah, the gameplay is just so similar to the other games of the genre. So it uses pretty much the exact same control scheme. You have the normal attack button, the special attack button, and all the various effects based on the direction you choose. The game does actually differ in that there's no uniform block or grab button in the game.
Huh.
So, while dodging works just like other platform fighting games, the only grabs available are actually tied to special attacks. Which makes them, feel a bit more powerful, but it's not something that's in every single person's toolbox. For example, like that Frog Goro guy.
Yeah.
He has a special attack that sticks out his tongue and attaches to the nearest enemy, and that counts as a grab, pulling him towards you. That's pretty cool, and I think they want to make grabs more of a specific aspect of a character as opposed to a generic capability.
Okay, so he's kind of he's like the grappler of the lineup.
Yeah, he is. And he has very short-ranged attacks, which is built for the character. That's why his tongue pulls his body towards you after that grab, and that's what makes the character quirky.
Okay.
Dodging works just like other platform fighting games, and you can even dodge in the air like standard. So overall, the fundamental fighting gameplay feels like the standard of the platform of the genre, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something that's pretty familiar.
So it's just something though that like it's just a different design choice. And it sounded, you said like it's a little bit more competitive based. Does that mean like you felt the balance was a little tighter in this game, maybe?
The part of the description is that it's a party game, but they removed a lot of randomness elements to the game that would kind of detract from it being more competitive.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Yeah, the game moves pretty quickly. There are some characters that are more sluggish than others, of course, but I would definitely hearken it to a slightly faster Smash 4, which is attractive to some people.
Mm-hmm.
There is no inherent block or grab, but that kind of makes defensive options feel somewhat limited at times. Though, on the same note, it does reward a bit of additional aggression and rushdown tactics, which is good for people who have that playstyle.
What about, is there anything in these games, or maybe something in general about these games, that makes being that one guy who just kind of sits in the back while the other guys weaken each other, is there anything that, like, punishes someone who tries to avoid engagement? Yeah.
Nothing too much. There is actually a separate mechanic that's included in the game called the rage meter. That kind of requires your participation in fights for you to build up. So, the rage meter builds up as you take or deal damage. Mm-hmm. And that rage meter lets you cancel attacks, break out of stun combos, add special properties to your special attacks.
Oh, okay. That's a cool little new feature.
So if you're actually in the mix, fighting and dealing damage and doing combos or taking damage, then you get that rage meter that you can use to power up your attacks and break out of combos.
Cool.
So if you guys have experience with traditional fighting games, it's kind of like an EX meter from Street Fighter.
Now, what about the stages themselves? I mean, that's one of the things that I think actually most about with the Brawl series is how vast and all the just the crazy events and the way the backgrounds change, and just it's very dramatic, not only visually but in the way it affects the stages. Do they do that, or do they also keep the stages pretty toned down and just focused on providing a competitive playground?
Honestly, the stages are kind of generic.
Okay.
Sorry, but most of them are usually just different configurations of static platforms. And, that's generally good for a competitive fighting game. You don't want all of those random elements that could interfere with your ability to display your own personal skill. At the same time, the stages aren't necessarily super inspiring or exciting. Mm-hmm. They're just functional, and I think they serve a practical purpose, but not necessarily a thematically interesting purpose.
They might, in other words, they're kind of like one step more than Final Destination. Like, just very straightforward, very sterile, maybe some colorful backgrounds, but that's about it.
Yeah. And honestly, that's not necessarily a knock on the game, because if you go into competitive Smash Bros, the fighting scene, people inherently pick the most static stages possible. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's part of the competitive scene and something that Brawlout is trying to tap into. So it makes sense.
All right. Well, on the topic of the competitive scene, how has that been? I mean, I know you've played a few people in person, but have you also done the online?
So, friends online lobbies are actually pretty reliable. Though, man, I've been trying to get online multiplayer games going, and it's not really as reliable as I'd like. Oh. Online play does work fairly well, but when I'm trying to connect to random players, I can experience quite a bit of jitteriness and lag, and that does hamper the situation a bit. This is an indie studio, though, Casey, so, I mean, I can't really expect the performance consistency of a fighting game like a Pokken Tournament. You can't really expect that as much, but, considering the emphasis of competitive fighting for this game, it's a little bit disappointing.
Okay, but you would then say it's a game that probably performs its best or realizes its full potential in a local
environment. Yeah, absolutely. It's even with online, with friend lobbies, if you're just trying to play with friends, it works quite well. But the only issue I really have are just trying to connect to random people online.
Okay, all right.
I do like the game. The characters are able to do a lot of really interesting things. We actually talked about this on the Discord chat. There's a character in the game called Olaf, where his recovery mechanic is that he creates an ice pillar from below him. And that pillar is static, and you can actually use that to recover if you're about to fall off the map.
Oh, okay.
That's not something you see in more traditional platform fighting games like Smash, because it essentially allows him to always have a platform available. But that does give a bunch of strategic, interesting choices to the character, because you can use that defensively to recover. You can use that defensively to create a wall to block an attack. You can use that offensively to trap people into a corner so you can, put them into a better combo position. So each of these characters have really quirky and, unique elements to them that you don't normally see in the other fighting games of this.
Okay. I like that, actually. That's one of those things that I'm usually pretty drawn to, is not just like, all right, he has this launch attack and this guy has this type of projectile. I like the idea of people who have totally unique powers that give them not just like a tactical flavor, but a real strategic option that changes their game style up. That's pretty cool.
It's definitely interesting, and I want to see the characters really grow and expand, because the roster so far is relatively minimal, and the unlocking system is definitely something that I have to knock it for.
How many characters are there total?
So I believe there's about 18 characters.
Okay.
I did notice that some of them are kind of reskins and reworks of existing characters.
Okay.
Smash does something similar, but considering it has a roster of over 50 characters compared to a smaller 18, I think I could forgive it for that in Smash. Also, I want to mention the piñata system in this game, which is essentially how the team handles loot boxes.
All right.
So this game does have loot boxes, and you can complete various daily or weekly quests, which unlocks different in-game currencies, and unlocking those in-game currencies can allow you to purchase cosmetics and add-ons separately. But whole characters are also tied to this piñata system.
Ooh, okay.
So if you want to unlock, let's say you want to unlock the astronaut robot dude.
Okay.
Which I want to unlock. I have to go through either grind out currency to purchase, or I have to go through the random piñata system to earn it. And I don't feel like this is really a great system for a fighting game.
Now, there's no actual cash money transactions in this involved, or is there?
Ooh, yes. You have to actually... You can get things through the in-game currency through playing with quests and all that stuff. But it's primarily intended for you to purchase it with real money. Now, it's a bit confusing on the Switch, since it's hard to navigate just where you would go to purchase the external currency to buy piñatas. And that whole interface is really flashy, but kind of impractical. So yeah, that aspect of it is a bit tricky.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, especially now, as everyone knows, like it's a pretty controversial topic right now. And I was actually going to even warn you about using the term loot boxes, because it's so dangerous right now. But that actually, if there is the opportunity to pay for them with real cash, then yes, that is the most accurate term.
Yeah, I can't describe it any other way. It is essentially a quote unquote loot box, regardless of how loaded that term is nowadays.
Right.
And also, unlocking the stages are actually kind of strange as well. You get 3 starting stages, and they're really generic and kind of straightforward and not incredibly interesting. But in order for you to unlock stages, you have to play through and level up each individual character, which unlocks 1 stage. And based on how you like this type of game, that can seem a bit grindy.
Well, I guess that will depend on, to me, how the 1-player mode is. Is there an enjoyable, engaging solo, option for this game, or is it really only going to be enjoyable in the multiplayer?
I wouldn't say that the single player is particularly amazing. It's there. There is, an ability to go through arcade towers, kind of similarly to, the old Mortal Kombats.
Okay.
But it's not really the big element of this game, and they really want you to continuously play as your character in just generic arcade modes in order to unlock currency and play and get more stages.
How much is the game by itself?
The base cost of Brawlout is $20, which if you like the game, it's good, and it's definitely something that I can see people getting really hardcore about. There's just a bunch of extraneous elements to the game that I feel kind of hamper my enjoyment of Brawlouts. Really, it's all the extraneous unlocking mechanics and ways to try to get unnecessary ways to try to get people to play more, which I feel is kind of not necessarily ideal.
Yeah, I think we've been moving towards, or at least on the Switch, I think Nintendo's been setting a precedent in a lot of people's minds about these kind of games just having the content there, and if there is something to unlock, it's just something that here's the exact goal you need to achieve in order to unlock it.
Especially for this particular genre, I want to be able to play as all of the characters available from the get-go, and I think that's just it's a missed opportunity for this type of game.
For me, it's even like it's not even like necessarily all of them. It's just like there's like one character I want to play as, but it's like he's one of the locked characters. So now I have to play as someone I'm not interested in really mastering just to get to the character that I really want to enjoy.
And that's how stages are unlocked even. You play as every single character, and each character is tied to one stage, and you have to level that character up to a certain point in order to unlock that stage, which means that you're sometimes forced to play as characters that you don't really like, and that's not necessarily an ideal experience.
Yeah, I mean, some people might appreciate that as it's a reason for me to try everyone out and get a good variety. But I think if you are going to take this kind of game, seriously, and you're just trying to be competitive, you generally don't want to waste your time on everybody.
Right, and I do want to stress, I like the fundamental gameplay of Brawlout, and I think they were doing something quite interesting with how strategic the rage meter and the rage mechanics are for this game. My only primary complaints are really, the extraneous unlocking and grinding system that they added to this genre.
Okay.
But other than that, it's a solid game, and I really want them to succeed.
All right, no, that's cool. I mean, it's one of those things that if you can get the people to play it, it sounds like it is going to be a fun platforming competition game. And we need more of that. In fact, tomorrow, if the, the bomb cyclone doesn't cancel it out for me, I do hope to see Brawlout at my Switch Fest tonight when this is airing. So I do hope to get my hands on this, and I think it's going to be a fun game for a whole bunch of us to play in a full-on group brawl situation.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend people playing this on the Pro Controller.
Okay.
It's one of those games that really would benefit from that.
All right, very cool. There was something else that we both actually played half of this last couple of weeks, and I wanted to just spend a little time. It's not a brand new game, but it is something that I wanted to at least, share our opinions on the Resident Evil Revelations pack. So that was Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2. You got 1 on the cartridge. You could download 2. And the first one, at least, was actually originally a 3DS game that has been brought over. You also had played that originally on 3DS, right?
Yes, I played it quite a while when it first came out, and I remember people really raving about it at the time.
Okay, yeah.
It came out during the era of Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 5, and people were kind of sour on those games. But Resident Evil Revelations came out on the 3DS, and they were really touting it as pushing the spirit of the Resident Evil franchise forward.
Interesting.
So it was surreal at the time for Resident Evil Revelations 1 to really be the standout RE game being on the 3DS. It was kind of nuts.
That is interesting. The last Resident Evil I have played to completion is RE4, actually.
That's the most recently touted good game in the franchise, other than, I guess, Resident Evil 7.
Oh, really? But, yeah. 7.
Yeah,
5 and... Don't even make me think about 7. It's so frightening just remembering what I watched of that. But, and then Resident Evil Revelations 2, is that a original title for the Switch?
No, it's not. Oh. It came out on the other consoles as a kind of pseudo-sequel to Resident Evil Revelations 1.
Okay, so that was on other non-Nintendo consoles and is now first time on Nintendo console here?
Right. It's being brought over to the Nintendo Switch as the collection, which I think is great to include.
Yeah, okay, very cool. So we'll go through these just like, I guess chronologically. You've played Resident Evil Revelations 2, and I played 1 on the Switch, and you've also played 1 on 3DS, so let's just talk about Resident Evil Revelations 1 right now, and this is the one that takes place, it jumps around, actually, in the plot-wise, but it primarily takes place on this abandoned ship, kind of like a Titanic surrogate, if you will.
Yeah, right. And I think that was a really interesting element to the game, because all of the modern Resident Evil games at the time were really jumping here and there and everywhere, and it was kind of jarring to a lot of the fan base. But isolating the setting into a shipwrecked cruise ship really added that more claustrophobic element that people liked about the franchise.
Yeah, it does seal home that there is no escape. Like, even in the mansion or in, Resident Evil 2 or any of the other ones, you kind of get the feeling like if stuff really went south, you could just run into the woods and just book it and just be out of here. There's some place.
Just book it.
Yeah, but you're on a ship, so if you do not solve this problem, you're
done for.
If the undead don't get you, you're gonna sink and drown, and there's just or starve to death in the middle of the ocean. So yeah, it's a cool setting. And they brought back Jill for this one and a sidekick character, Parker.
Parker, right? Okay.
Yes, he's that big, he's that husky guy. He's kind of a sidekick on here, and he's actually around a fair amount of the game, not only in terms of, the storyline assistance, but he's there fighting with you as he follows you around in rooms. He actually can take a few shots, though, of course, his guns seem to have a lot less firepower than yours, and, though I guess that compensated by the fact that he does not use up your ammo when he shoots.
Right, and because each of those bullets are a big deal in this game.
Yes. Oh, I will say, I did run into an ammo problem in this game. It's the first time in a Resident Evil, and I'm usually super careful, but there are certain choke points in this game where I did not realize there were unlimited supplies of zombies or whatever the weird undead things in this game are. I did not realize that during certain boss fights, an unlimited supply of zombies come at you, and I always assumed the games gave you X ammo to deal with X threats.
Yeah, that's one thing that's, that really, it was really part of the Resident Evil franchise. Ammo is a commodity. It's something you cherish. And that they were straying further and further away from that commoditization of ammo in newer games, but they really brought it back hardcore in Revelations.
It does, and I'll say, it did tick me off when I realized I was basically painted into a corner because the boss alone, the first boss, absorbs a lot of damage. And they even set up, there's like explosives you can set off to do some of the damage, but you still have to pour your ammo. But since I didn't realize how much I had wasted on the superfluous side guys, and I had ended up saving because it auto saves at certain points, and I was just, I got either learn how to use the knife or I'm going to start over. And so I did try to learn how to knife to death guys for a while, but it really put my game to a hold. I don't hold it against the game because it was my mistake. And you know what?
Right.
It is good that ammo is once again a fear. Though I did not care for some of the ways you have to look for ammo in this game.
Oh yeah. How did that work in Revelations 1 again?
Well, they added, not only do you see the stuff just floating around in different places, but they gave you that Genesis scanner.
Okay.
And the Genesis scanner is just like another tool that you have where you point this, like a radar detector kind of thing, and you just look around the room that you're in with this weird, whatever device, and if you see something on it, you lock onto it, it scans it, and then it'll tell you, oh, there's an item in that drawer that for some reason you couldn't see until this high-tech device looked at it. And then it'll say, oh, there's some ammo here, or there's like a modification kit for your gun, or, some really good stuff is found. But I did find that a little tedious. I don't like not only checking every room basically twice. Once you look through for stuff that you can see, and then you have to look through it again with the Genesis scanner in order to find any hidden items that are just invisible for whatever reason.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that as being something to not enjoy so much.
Yeah, and a lot of ammo is hidden that way. So it is something that you kind of have to do if you do appreciate ammo.
That's fair.
I did see, though, that this game has a lot of these little multiplayer modes to it, or at least this one thing, the raid mode, where up to 2 players can actually run through chapters. I guess one player will be controlling Parker, and that's kind of why he's in this game. It's like, it was actually part of the design was that you can go through it as like a team and just kind of try to see how fast you can beat challenges in it with an ally, which is a pretty cool mode. I did notice that the size of the chapters feels you could tell it was made for 3DS because it is broken down into very manageable bites of like 15-minute chapters. You could turn this on, get on the train, and then maybe 15, 20 minutes experience an entire like section of the game where you've explored an area, maybe hit a plot scene, and maybe even reach a boss fight of some sort. And then it kind of ends in a very, discreet manner, has like a little recap of the last chapter when you load it back up, like you're watching a mini series. And it feels like it was made for a portable player. And so I think this is well suited for that aspect of the Switch. If you're looking for something in a play on the train, you don't have to feel like you have to play for 2 hours straight to get anywhere.
Yeah, that's definitely it's interesting how that works out for Resident Evil Revelations 1 compared to 2.
Yeah.
I guess did you have anything else to say about Rev 1 really?
I guess other than that, just the graphics, I wanted to mention that I could definitely see that the updated graphics, it's really nice. Some people complain that it's not really up to Switch standards, but considering that it is just an update of the 3DS game with some extra added features, I think it's pretty impressive looking. It looks really sharp. I think the frame rate's a little, not perfect, but it's still, again, it's a modified 3DS game, so you can hardly tell, and it still looks gorgeous, and I was pretty into the plot and everything about it. I was having fun with Resident Evil Revelations. First Resident Evil I've played in a while.
Yeah. And so I guess that's a really good starting point for me to talk about Rev 2.
Yes,
Revelations
which
2
totally looks scarier. I'll just say I only looked at some of it. Like, I just started it. I was like, everything in this game looks scarier.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a shift, since you can tell Revelations 2 was built with a console in mind. It's honestly relatively similar to Revelations 1 in how it works. And though I do have to say, I kind of felt a little bit disappointed that this was a digital download only, but I'm guessing that's probably just to save on cartridge licensing costs.
I think that's what it is right now, yeah. And I think that's what we're going to have to expect for at least the rest of 2018.
Yeah, and you know what? It's something that I have to get over. It's not that big of a deal, but it's something you have to be mindful of if you're getting this collection.
Yeah.
But yeah, going beyond that, Resident Evil Revelations 2 is about the same fundamental gameplay as Revelations 1, but with the added capability of playing local co-op in the campaign itself.
Oh, okay. All right. So they kind of took raid mode and made it not just a separate
campaign.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, which I actually absolutely love. I really enjoyed the experience of playing this game in co-op, and I'm glad that they extended it to the campaign itself, not just a separate raid mode. That's
all I could dream of in something like this. Because honestly, I feel like Resident Evils really attract spectators, like people who just want to. Like when I'm playing one of these at home or at a friend's place, they're usually perfectly content to sit on the couch in the dark and just be spooked. But that's great that now it's like, no, you're not just going to sit there and react to me getting murdered. You're going to be there. You're going to try to pull that thing.
You're going to join. Yes. Yeah. And that's actually I really, really like about this game. The characters themselves are quite cool. And I love that each character in the co-op pairs have asymmetrical capabilities, Casey.
Oh, this one is the Redfield, right?
Yes, Claire, Redfield. Yes. Of course, this game features different characters throughout the different chapters, but the first chapter, at the very least, starts with Claire Redfield, and your partner is Barry's daughter named Moira.
All right. Right.
And which is really cool because Claire, they're both, females, and they're really cool characters. And Claire is actually a lot stronger offensively. She has all the guns, and she has she can pick up shotguns, she can pick up handguns. She has the primary knife that you use for combat.
Okay.
While Moira is a lot more fragile, the partner character, but she has a flashlight that you can use to get useful information in combat. You can use the flashlight to stun zombies coming at you, and you even later on get a crowbar where you can stun enemies and follow up on Claire's original attacks. So you have one character that's the primary offensive vanguard, while you have a secondary character that does all the support roles, isn't as active in the combat, but can really contribute when needed.
Oh, that's cool. Actual division of labor.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that you remember the Genesis scanner in the previous, in Revelations 1. Mm-hmm. That Genesis scanner functionality is tied to the secondary character's flashlight capabilities. So while the first player goes in, observes the room to make sure it's safe, the secondary character can use the flashlight to look for items and pickups for you guys to get. And that, I actually like that aspect of the game quite a bit, because it does feel like you're in the same area trying to do different things at the same time, but contributing to the fundamental goal of the place.
How would that work if you're playing it one player? Does the computer just do the scanning automatically, or do you have to activate it?
I honestly played this whole thing co-op, so I wouldn't really know. But it's a case of, I think it's something that you just have to switch characters for.
Okay.
The game is a lot of fun, and it's definitely interesting how you brought up people enjoying watching this game. This is a great way to get them to really participate while still being the primary attacker or primary person dealing most of the damage. It's playing as one or the other characters is a really different experience, and I think it's a ton of fun having that asymmetry.
I think I could really dig that if I could find someone I don't think Amelie is going to join me for that as much as she joined me for Mario Odyssey or something like that.
Of course,
but I do have some friends like lunchroom people at work who would join me for. In fact, that's how I played Resident Evil 5. That's the one that was in the African setting.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and that one, I played that at lunchtime, and it was really fun just to have a partner and we met up and we would, that's how we only played through that game. And we had a really cool kind of system of teamwork together, and it was pretty intense. But this one isn't really in the vein of, let's say, Resident Evil 4 and 5, where it was the high action, right? This is more like the last Revelations, where it's, the tank controls, the more methodical, not as much of the fast action movie style of gameplay, is it?
I would definitely have to say it's the controls aren't as tanky as I remember Revelations being. You can control your characters like a standard third-person shooter.
Okay.
Because you can aim with the right stick, your gun with the right stick, and then move around with the left stick.
Oh, okay.
Like a more standard third-person shooter. It is definitely not as in your face and like high speed as Resident Evil 5, I guess.
Yeah.
But there are definitely moments where you need to be more active in your movements and dodge and try to position yourself and then attack.
Okay.
And during certain set pieces, there are swarms of enemies that you have to worry about. And it's definitely a really great shared experience playing those stressful moments in co-op.
Resident Evil 4, that is the thing that Resident Evil 4 and 5 ruined me for in the future, is that it's very hard for me to go back to playing these games with the classic controls. So
the tank controls.
Yeah, I just see myself as I was playing the last one. I just see myself why can't I just run back? Why do I have to slowly aim? I want to be commandoing it, and
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely do that in this game. The controls feel more like Resident Evil 4 than original tank controls.
That's
which
cool.
But it has the same setting and mindset as Resident Evil Revelations 1, which is a great mix of the two. I do have to say the episodes of the chapters are longer.
Okay.
I believe each of them can take about 2 to 3 hours to beat, though you can always, stop and put it down whenever needed.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever's needed. And
right.
You can switch from single player to split screen at any time.
Do they focus all on the main plot line, or do they do like Revelations 1 did, where I felt like every other chapter was a jump to a whole other scene in another part of the world with different characters?
They do that kind of similarly here. And I think that's just how Revelations is going to work.
All
which,
right.
Give or take, depending on how you feel about that narrative style.
No, yeah, it was pretty cool. Like I said, they were short bits, and whenever I was playing as characters in another part of the world, I knew I didn't have to worry about their ammo as much, because I'm not going to be playing them after this. I can just shoot all the grenades I want.
I really like co-op experiences like this, and I'm so glad that it's coming out on the Switch, or that this came out on the Switch.
And I think it's so appropriate that these two games, based on playing through in teamwork, are something that we covered in a tag team fashion.
Oh yeah, RE1 and 2. I think it's so perfect. We didn't talk about raid modes at all, but I have to say people are really enjoying raid modes as well. I haven't delved into them myself, but it's something that people are surprisingly into within our Discord community. So if you're looking for raid partners, you can definitely hit us up and let them know.
All right, I think it's time to tag out and move into the news rundown. All that before we hit up the awards.
Nice.
All right, news rundown, and here are your Nintendo Switch headlines. It looks like we may be getting a Nintendo Direct this month. Actually, I'm going to personally go out on a limb and say we're definitely getting a Nintendo Direct this month, because they haven't announced anything big that's coming out yet, and they're due. But rumors are spreading that it's going to be on January 11th. That is due to a few different things. Some people on Reddit have supposedly gotten an email by accident, they said, from EA that mentions the Nintendo Direct. It's a rather elaborate looking email, and it looks like it's possibly legit. And then that has also been followed up by some Amazon postings for games that are not yet released, just like kind of placeholders that said that they will be released right after the Nintendo Direct. So there's a lot of things saying it's coming soon. I'm not going to personally say it's January 11th, definitely, but I know there's one coming very soon, and we're just going to be. There's got to be. And they always announce it at least a few days before. So hopefully by Monday we'll know for sure when it's coming.
Absolutely. Now, another really interesting tidbit is that apparently the Nintendo president is aiming for a 20 million Switch shipment total next year. I guess this year, 2018,
yeah, this year,
right?
yes, that's right.
Yeah, this year now.
Happy New Year, JV.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, and that's like a 25% increase, 33% increase over actually from the 14 million that they were shooting to ship in 2017. Actually, it started at 10 million. They upped it to 14 million when it started doing crazy good. And now
it's essentially doubled from their initial expectations, which is so good and awesome for the Switch.
Yeah, that just means things are ramping up. They do not expect this to be a plateau yet, that the arc is still rising. So you're going to have a lot more people to play in Brawlout online. We mentioned last week or the week before how there was the confirmation, not that there was any doubt, but there was confirmation that Nintendo is already working on the next Zelda title. But we were speaking about how we're really curious on what direction it'll go in, whether it's going to keep the open world nature of this or be more like the traditional ones where there's more of a set, arc to go through and locations to visit in a certain order. But in an interview just recently with Breath of the Wild producer Eiji Oinuma, he said, and I quote, "That level of freedom is something that needs to be maintained in Zelda games going forward. My eyes have been opened to how important that is."
I love that quote, mostly because it really shows how the Zelda franchise itself is evolving as more games come out. And this is such an exciting aspect, and I feel like if they restrict the freedom back to how it used to be, it'll feel like a bit of a regression.
I think so too. I think that it's so clicked and it feels like this is just the right direction. I mean, look, there's been so many Zelda games already. It's not like they haven't explored that format very thoroughly in the past. So this is and there's a lot of new things they can do with this same format in the future. So yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely so much room for innovation, but retaining that same freedom of Breath of the Wild. I think it's exciting to see what's coming up next. So apparently, Switch hackers have been working really hard, and there have been claims that homebrew capabilities will be added to the Switch very soon. Yeah,
they were talking about it. There's like some German hackers at a recent, a hacker convention. So it's right now, from what I understand, they're prototypes of the homebrew only work on the 3.0, and it's really tricky though to even keep your Switch in a certain version because of the online updates. So you basically have to never go online and then get your update only from a specific game cartridge that has that version that you need.
Yeah, and I think it's it's something that's inevitable, but considering how often the Nintendo Switch is updated and forces an update, I feel like the hackers are really going to need to keep on the ball if they want to continue support for future versions of the operating system.
I still think it's just going to be something for a very niche number of people who just want to I think it's going to be I actually do believe it's going to be mostly attractive to people who are interested in not necessarily piracy, but playing these homebrewed games that people have. Obviously, there's going to be some people who are into the piracy version of it too, but obviously we do not condone that here.
Yeah, we don't condone that, though I feel like when it comes to homebrew launchers, a lot of it is to throw in emulators onto the platform, and I think that's going to be a big part of it.
If you've been interested in the neon pink and green Joy-Cons that came for the Splatoon version of the Switch, they may be going on sale independently in North America as of today, January 5th, according to a listing on EB Games in Canada's systems that some people dug up. So we'll see by the time this posts. If you want, you can check online and see if those are available independently. A lot of people like just getting the different colored controllers. There's been a lot of people who just collect them, though they didn't necessarily want to buy a whole new system just to get them. So
exactly. So on the MOBA front, Arena of Valor is having closed beta signups open for the EU region. You can go on, fill out personal details regarding your gaming habits, which MOBAs you've played in the past, what mobile MOBAs you've played, what platforms you game on mostly. But yeah, it's exciting to see that the Arena of Valor is moving forward, and I would love to see MOBAs take off on the Switch.
Yeah, I'll put a link to this in case you want to try signing up. This is specifically for the EU version of the game, but they ask you what your region is, so eventually when this becomes available in the US, you should be able to sign up the same way. I did, though, download the game on my iPhone, because it is available on iPhone now and iPad.
That's right.
If you want to kind of get your own little beta test of it, I think that's worth it. It's a free download anyway. I have been testing it out, and it's hard for me to adjust because I'm still in the 3v3 mentality from Vainglory, and I'm having to shift my concept of
mindset.
Yeah, it's a little different. Like the strategy of 5-on-5 definitely has its own nuances, and I have to relearn what my roles are.
Yeah, though if you're used to more standard PC MOBAs where 5v5 is the norm, it should be a relatively seamless transition, and you primarily have to worry about the new control scheme.
It is weird seeing like Wonder Woman and Batman run around in a MOBA with other random crazy characters.
Well, they actually had a DC MOBA game quite a bit called Infinite Crisis.
Oh.
Yeah, and that it attempted to take off, but it shut down pretty quickly. So I guess apparently all of the DC assets moved over to Arena of Valor, and we'll see if that translates over to the Switch version.
If they do establish themselves here, Square also released that Flame vs. Blaze MOBA on the iPhone not that long ago, and that's another one that might be interesting to see. If it's already Square, they're already bringing stuff to Switch. Probably wouldn't be hard for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Last bit of news I wanted to mention, the Miiverse Archive. This is really cool. There is a group of people who have just compiled 17 terabytes worth of Miiverse posts that are now gone from the world elsewhere since the Miiverse feature from the Wii U and the 3DS shut down in November. And it kind of feels like it's a little bit of a hole in the Nintendo community, since we've had these sort of things for a long time now.
Since the Wii.
Since the Wii, right. And I really like these, and especially the way they were integrated into games like Splatoon, and I always was fond of checking them out. So I'll leave a link to it also, but you can go and you can search through all these things either by date. You can look up users, you can how many yeahs it got, upvotes basically, and dates, and it's an awesome archive because some people put really good work into these, and it's almost a little bit of a time capsule, I think.
Absolutely.
Since a lot of people drew pictures or posted messages relevant to things that were going on at the time.
Yeah, and I actually loved how creative people got with the limited canvas that they have.
Yeah,
it's inspiring.
Yeah, all just black and white and scribble scrabble, and it's
but people make really good stuff on it.
You know what? Here's my totally unfounded prediction for the next Direct. There'll be something new. There's going to be a new social community, sharing system, some successor to like a Miiverse in the next Direct.
I suspect that type of functionality would be tied to that new app that they're gonna hopefully update.
Yeah. Just something like some sort of like drawing or messenger thing on there, I think would fill in this missing hole here.
I agree.
Updates.
So the Octobrush Nouveau has been released during the New Year week. This is actually a holdover from the original Splatoon.
Yes.
And it uses a different set of sub-weapons and specials.
Yeah.
But it is an Octobrush, and it's cool that even more stuff is coming out for Splatoon.
Yeah, and yeah, it is statistically identical to the original Octobrush, just, has a new array of things, which is always good for options.
Yeah.
Down the pipe, a few new games we saw were announced. For me, most interestingly, was Mercenary Saga Chronicles. These are the Final Fantasy Tactics style tactic RPGs, and actually 2 of them came out on the DS, but one of them never did make the jump over there before, and so this was just announced, no specific date yet, but it'll become out in a 3-pack, so that's a lot of tactical RPG with all those challenge and strategies that you have to do, and a pretty serious storyline. It was pretty cool.
Right.
We also have Rebirth, which this is just another rumor, but there's a whole bunch of these. There were these 3 Rebirth games, which are basically 16-bit remakes of Konami games like Castlevania, Gradius, and Contra. Just they were put on the Wii, and since the Wii U, and since the Wii U versions will probably be not available forever, there's been some rumors that they're going to be adapted for the Switch. We'll cross our fingers for that. A lot of people seem to be pretty excited about that.
That's right.
The others, I'll just say, is War Genesis 2, Zeo Drifter, Rogue Aces, and Grave Danger Ultimate Edition. And finally, one I saw a good trailer for was called Inner Space. This is like it kind of feels like a space age Pilot Wings to me. It was just an exploration, fly around in this weird ship in these crazy alien locations.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and that's that we did get a date for January 16th.
Yes. Now for new releases, we got on January 4th, Pick-a-Pix Deluxe, Stickbold, a Dodgeball Adventure Deluxe, Rockin' Racing Grand Prix. Now on January 11th, we have The Escapists 2, Fury, Of Mice and Sand Revised, Moorhun Knights and Castles, Energy Invasion, Neo Geo Art of Fighting 2, surprise, another Neo Geo fighting game, Arcade Archives Crazy Climber, and Draw a Stickman Epic 2.
Yeah, that one looked cool. It's like you draw your character that you play as in the game, and you draw tools and all this other weird stuff. Yeah, had a kind of a Scribblenuts feel to it.
Yeah, Draw a Stickman.
All right, time for the ceremonious awarding of glory to the games that have made our 2017. JV, are you prepared for the SwitchCast Choice Awards?
I am so ready.
All right, let's do it. Alright, so each of us has picked 5 games from 2017 that have been the most played, most enjoyed, and just generally most exciting things on the Switch. Our personal 5 choices are from anything, whether it's a Nindie or a main console, first-party game. But we also had 2 categories for the SwitchCast Choice. People voted on the Nindies and overall separately. And we'll have a few honorable mentions for games that were still awesome but didn't quite make our lists. JV, why don't you kick us off with what your number 5 for 2017 was?
All right, my number 5 is Mario Kart Deluxe 8, or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I definitely wanted to add this in my list because it is absolutely the pickup game that I use to introduce new players into the Switch. It's so casual friendly, yet also so competitive friendly that you can get into this game. You can get out of it what you really put in based on who you're playing with. It's such a versatile game for that.
That is the main thing. The accessibility options. I feel like a lot of people just don't care that they exist, but for me, who likes to get like little cousins or something like that into playing just and not get frustrated, I did like putting those on and just having anybody who's never played before able to enjoy it. And actually, when I was playing Mario Kart on the SNES Classic over the weekend I mentioned, I did realize how tricky the controls were in some of those old ones. And I take for granted how much smoother the controls are on these new ones. So
Absolutely. And I definitely wanted to put this on my top 5 just because how comfortable I feel putting it on, regardless of what group of gamers I'm playing with.
I was very torn. I was considering that for my number 5, but for similar reasons, I went with Splatoon 2. It is the shooting genre made fun and accessible in this, the unique way. The controls were easy for people to pick up. Everyone who I've ever shown it to has found a weapon that they just kind of click with, even or a role. Some people have enjoyed going out and assassinating other Inklings out there, and some people prefer to just sit around and paint the background and enjoy that and dodge bullets while they're out there. So it's been the most accessible and yet competitive game, and it's been easy to find a competition any time of day,
Exactly.
Yeah. So Splatoon 2, my number 5, Mario Kart Deluxe 8, your number 5. Number 4.
All right, so my number 4 is Fast RMX. So, yeah, it's kind of weird to have 2 racing games back to back on my list, but I just loved Fast RMX. It was the game that really scratched the racing itch when it came out. It was a game that I was looking for at the time. Breath of the Wild was the primary game for the Switch, but I wanted something that was a different pace, something more frenetic, something that really scratched that F-Zero itch, and Fast RMX is that game for me.
You're into the racing here, huh?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's, from an independent studio, but I believe it's Shin-En Games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Shin-En Multimedia have been really big proponents of Nintendo consoles, and I love how much care and how well built their games are, even during launch windows. So Fast RMX is my thing.
Nice. My number 4 shows up higher on JV's list, so we'll double blind select.
Explore it later.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't you tell us what your number 3 is then?
All right. So my number 3 is Doom. Yeah. So, this game is obviously a game that came out in other consoles, but Doom is a pivotal game for me. And I believe it's a pivotal game for the Switch, just because it is a modern console game that has shown to be working quite well on the Switch. It exceeds a lot of the expectations because you wouldn't expect the Switch to be able to handle something like this. And for me personally, I actually just really loved having a more traditional and frenetic first-person shooter on the Switch console. It's something that I could point to and say, hey, the Switch is capable of doing this type of stuff too, and can do it really well. So that's why I wanted to put it on my list. I enjoyed it so much, and I enjoy that it's on the Switch platform.
Awesome. I actually picked probably 180 degrees different direction.
Absolutely.
Yes. But it's also important. My number 3 is Stardew Valley. It's not pushing the boundaries of what the Switch can do, but I feel that it was a game that was already made perfect for this portable system, and it's just a great game in general. It is the farm simulation where you have both, you can just do anything from your relationship management, go out mining, kill monsters, grow wheat, whatever. The events, I spent probably 100 hours on it. It's one of those games I just couldn't put down, so that alone earned it, the high ranking on here. But it's just a game that has flourished on the Switch with people being able to talk about it. The community loves it, and with multiplayer and still, other updates coming for it, it's a game that is just an evergreen title that I will always find a reason to turn it back on, even if I just play another, maybe I'll just play a week of my life in there every week of my own life,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so Stardew Valley, my number 3.
It's so interesting that we have such contrasting games for the third spot.
Yes. All right, number 2 for you was my number 4.
Yes, so number 2, if you guys haven't guessed, is Pokken Tournament DX.
Yes, which we still have not battled each other in.
I know, and I feel like it's never going to happen at this point. As if you guys have been longtime listeners of the podcast, you know that this is the one game that I kept requesting on the Nintendo Switch, and it finally came out. So the fact that such a dream came to fruition really left an impact on me, and I love this game to death.
I mean, I think we're contractually obligated to have at least one Pokemon title on our lists, considering our histories.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, as a person who has never before this really dedicated myself to a fighting game, this game, I feel, bridged the gap not only for playing it, but it's brought me into the fighting game world. I was able to easily pick up the different characters without having to memorize anything really crazy, like any crazy combos. I don't have to, like, make my hands... I don't have to have carpal tunnel syndrome learning how to, practice Hadoukens and stuff. It's just very easy to pick up. The training mode was great. It helped me, and the online competition has been exciting and fun, and I like the characters. It's more colorful than any fighting game, which drew me into it. Now I'm actually looking for my next fighting game fix because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to bring people who don't normally play fighting games into the genre.
Mm-hmm. All right. My number 2 is actually, okay, this is something that might be surprising to me. My number 2 is Zelda, Breath of the Wild.
Oh, yes.
Honestly, I mean, one of us had to put it on a list somewhere, right?
Oh, of course.
I mean, what can I say about this game that everyone doesn't know? I think the most important thing about this title was actually the fact that it was a rite of passage for so many of us. It was the game that I can't think of another title that so many other people played at the same time as me. Everyone who bought a Switch got it. Pretty much everyone who bought a Switch got Breath of the Wild and played it, and we all were trading stories for like a month about, oh no, I went to the West and I found this thing in the desert, or I found this thing, and it was pretty brilliant.
It was a water cooler game for sure.
Yes, right. And there's still stuff I haven't discovered, and there's the DLC, and it's just it was just a great experience in that way, with so much content that everybody had a different experience and was able to share. The only reason it's probably not my number 1, honestly, the only thing I was really disappointed in was the finale. I was not over the moon with how it ended. And so I was just like still wanting more. And I guess the DLC provides that. But, just the new direction for Zelda. And I can't wait for more in this open world genre and just exploring.
Right. It's such an important game for the Switch because of how unifying an experience it is. Mm-hmm. Everyone who got a Switch had it. It was something that every Switch owner talked about. And the hype that spread around Breath of the Wild really inspired people who probably might not have gotten a Switch in the first place to pick up the platform when it was available. So it's an important game for sure.
All right. Number 1.
Drum roll. I feel like you should say yours first for once.
Okay, all right, we'll switch things up. Okay. My number 1 is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. What's your number 1?
Oh, so my number 1 is Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
What do you know?
Yeah. So I definitely, I'm so surprised that this is, well, actually, you know what? I'm both surprised and kind of understanding of this being our number 1. I think it fits both of our sensibilities so well.
I'll say that we're both pretty big RPG fans in general. But if you recall, I came into this extremely, with extreme trepidation. I even was not sure I wanted to buy it, or if I bought into the hype of the game when they were doing the Nintendo Direct on it.
Yeah, I remember you were really down on that Nintendo Direct trailers that they showed.
Yeah, because I felt they didn't focus on the right things. And now that I've gotten to play it, I do appreciate the mechanics and the combat system, and that all is extremely satisfying and addicting. But that's not why I'm in love with it so much. I am in love with these characters, probably first and foremost. I think the English voice acting really seals it for me. It really brings all these characters to life and makes me like them. And I think that the art and the style of it all has been it's just come together in a way that I have not enjoyed an RPG in a very long time.
Right. It definitely scratches that Phantasy Star Online itch for me. When it comes to the melding of sci-fi and fantasy genres, this feels really good for that.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to like steal too much from other genres in that it's such an original universe.
Absolutely. It's so well thought out and well fleshed out, and above just the sweeping grandeur of the setting and the locations, I want to emphasize just how much I really like the characters in this game. I agree the English voice acting seals the deal for me because a lot of the dialogue feels so intentionally natural. You know what I mean? Aside from the really silly in-battle quotes and comments and silliness, the conversations, the personal moments, a lot of the heart-to-hearts really are engaging, and they really get you to enjoy the characters themselves. And it's something that I haven't felt in a while in an RPG.
And I've been lucky, and you know how much I get annoyed at like over fan serviciness in games, and this does have some fan servicey,
it has quite a bit
cringy moments. I still feel like it's buried enough in how much good content. The fan servicey stuff is pretty isolated in terms of scenes. You can take or leave the design of certain, characters that you can pop in and out of your party or just ignore them. That's fine. But there's so much good stuff that just buries any annoyance I have at that. So it's more than makes up.
I absolutely agree. I think people can complain about various aspects of the game, but I just feel like how the characters are portrayed themselves and how the personalities come out and are written, I feel like it's really endearing, and I'm glad that this came out before the end of the year.
Yeah,
so that it can make this list.
And how are you doing with the battle system? I mean, it seems
I love it.
It seems so insurmountable when I looked at it at first with all the different element combos, driver combos, blah, 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 use this, and then, the finishing combo things. But it all kind of teaches you it at such a slow pace that you master every one mechanic before they throw another that you need to use. And by now I'm just doing it all so naturally.
Yeah, and in my eyes, I feel like that type of learning curve harkens back to something like Monster Hunter. It seems really inaccessible from the start, but once you play it enough and once it clicks, it's just a smooth, really enjoyable combat system from there. Lastly, I definitely want to emphasize just how interesting and how involved you can get with all the side characters in the game, essentially the blades. I was surprised at how much I actually cared about the personalities of the individual collectible blades you get.
Yeah,
it's something that they handled really well.
Because mechanically they're pretty much the same as like a materia from Final Fantasy VII, but they integrate them that they actually matter as character, or they even trick you into feeling like they are party members, not just something you equip for certain powers.
Absolutely, and I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily count this as spoilers, KC. But as you level up the attribution or as you level up the affinity of your blades, some of the bonuses require you to go through fully voice acted side quests to increase their power even more.
Very cool.
And it just, like, those side quests really add a lot of personality and heart to each of these blades, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. It's something that I look forward to whenever I open up a new blade.
I love how you said, though, like, you said it best when you were like, I don't want to finish it. I don't want to be done with the game. You don't want to beat it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, you're holding off on finishing it.
Yeah, that's why right now David and I are doing side quests to make sure our blades are up as good as possible, and that inherently adds more character stories for each of my blades. So
I'm going to hold off on anything more I have to say on it because I do plan on doing that Switch topics, and I'm going to have a lot to say during that. So.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much more to cover, even more than what we've discussed.
I think everyone can just hear in our
episodes.
voices how head over heels we are with this.
Yeah, and that's why this game is number one for both of us.
Yes, very much so, very much so. But what is number one with the Switch Cats? We took a poll and you answered, so we're going to go off. First off, the Nindies. In terms of the Nindies for Switch, your votes were number 5, Blaster Master Zero with 3% of the votes, Rocket League with 6% of the votes at number 4, SteamWorld Dig 2 coming in with 18% of the votes at number 3. It got a little surprising here. Golf Story came in at 21% for number 2. And topping the list with 36% of the votes, Stardew Valley.
Oh man, Stardew Valley is huge on our community. Even to this date, the Stardew Valley room is booming, and we created this room even before the game came out on the Switch.
Yes, people were sharing advice on like how to get started and make sure everyone was as smooth as had a smoother startup as possible. So it was really cool because this is like some people's third time playing it through. Like,
and it's mind blowing how active and how enthusiastic people are about Stardew Valley, especially considering it's just a single player game. There's no multiplayer aspect of it whatsoever right now.
Right.
But but people are so active and enthusiastic, and it's inspiring.
Yeah, and it's the most laissez-faire. Like compared, I really thought Rocket League was going to dominate this category for the hardcore competitive, and it also had a previously existing community of fans before coming to the Switch. But Stardew is the one that I think just had the most casual and broad appeal, and that's why it was number 1. I mean, Golf Story is right behind it too. I'm actually surprised to see that because came out at the same time. We were excited for both games, but I think Stardew just really took off. And so, Golf Story still got its own little following of people who enjoyed its relaxing. So it seems like the more relaxing games took off in this realm, at least.
Yeah.
But in overall Switch games, where anything goes, your votes were at number 5 with 2% of the votes was ARMS. And as you could tell, it's going to be exponential jumps in all the rankings from here. Number 4 with 8% of the votes, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It started out actually pretty low, but it's the title that shortly after, because it came out later than all the others, it jumped up maybe like a week later, really high.
Right.
In number 3 with 10% of the votes, Splatoon 2. 19% of the votes for number 2 is Super Mario Odyssey. And with a whopping 60% of the votes, Zelda Breath of the Wild. No surprises there.
Woo! Yeah, Zelda! Number 1 game for SwitchCast Choice. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations, Zelda. Now, I think this is the time we have to bring up something, though. The number 2 game was not on either of our lists. Why is such a popular game that we both actually had very deep conversations on how surprisingly good it was, and we were both even considering it as a possible game of the year contender? Why did it not make either of our lists, do you think?
That's actually a really tricky question. I enjoyed Super Mario Odyssey so much, and I recognize just how good of a game it is in general. It's objectively a very good game. But, there's just certain other games that I felt really spoke to me more than Mario Odyssey. Super Mario Odyssey felt like a game that everyone could enjoy and love, and that's kind of an expected feeling. But the games that fit on my list really resonated with me as a person individually.
I considered it it almost made my number 5 because purely on the multiplayer, the 2-player, just anything that got me to play something with my wife is extremely endearing to me.
Valuable.
That's very valuable, and I appreciate that. But at the end, even Amelie was she wasn't as enthusiastic about going back and grinding, once we had beaten the main game, which didn't take very long, but then going back and just kind of scouring the world for the moons that we missed wasn't as enthralling for her, and kind of trailed off after that. So it was like, beat the main game, great ending, but then it kind of petered out in interest for her. Unless you're a completionist, that might not mean as much for you,
Right. And I definitely have so much respect and appreciation for Super Mario Odyssey. It's kind of the second Breath of the Wild in that it is a wide game that is a large shared experience. But, on a personal level, I think my top 5 is a bit above Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, and like you said, for me, it's just not my genre. Like I've never been a huge platformer or 3D platformer kind of guy. So the fact that I even considered it is a pretty big deal. But yeah, it got outclassed by things that were closer to my own personal style of game.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I thought it was also worth mentioning, there was a list of the best-selling games on Amazon for 2017, and I just thought it would be, since we're doing these lists of top games of the year, reading off the Switch top sales on there. Actually, they topped their overall sales of video games in several different, for several different titles. I'll go bottom up. Their number 10 best-selling game was Zelda Breath of the Wild Wii U. But number 3 was Zelda Breath of the Wild Switch. Splatoon 2 was their number 7. And then number 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And number 1, Super Mario Odyssey. So it did win in that category of total sales.
Absolutely. And it's worth noting that the number 8 and 9 spots were Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, respectively.
True.
So essentially, Nintendo owned this list. It's 7 out of the 10. 70%. Yes, 70% of the top best-selling games were Nintendo titles, and that's a big deal. Nintendo is back.
Yes. So with all the things that we talked about that we didn't mention or we did mention, were there any honorable mentions that you wanted to make sure came out before we ended this episode and ended these awards?
Yes, I definitely wanted to bring up Fire Emblem Warriors. It is definitely a game that inspired discussion between, me and David, and I really want to emphasize how much fun we had in that co-op experience. Mm-hmm. I feel like Warriors games really encompass that quite a bit.
Awesome. I wanted to mention, even though it's, again, not a game that was my genre, but I feel Puyo Puyo Tetris was really great one to mention for just bringing a sense of competition and just fun, like just Tetris, and a lot of people just picking it up and playing together. I don't know, it was the first game I remember people being very excited to do local multiplayer in. I guess maybe other than Snipper Clips, which is another honorable mention. It was just my favorite, show the game off to somebody else and do co-op rather than competitive. That's my fail-safe still. That is my number 1 game to show people who I want to introduce to the Switch.
Now, I definitely want to make sure that the number 1 blast game that we mentioned in our honorable mention section is the spectacular failure that is Room in the Night Sky.
Absolutely.
That game is spectacular and amazing how bad it is. So, yes, Room in the Night Sky, you're outstanding in how terrible.
I guess it is worth mentioning only because it is the first game I remember seeing on the eShop that everyone kind of winced at and was like, ooh, is this what the eShop is going to be like? I really hope it's not like, the Wii's shovelware problem.
Yeah, luckily, the Switch is swerving around that issue.
All right, well, those are all our awards, but let us end this episode with our new closing ceremony, which is the System Switch, where each of us just mentions one game that is not on the Switch that we'd like to see on here. And JV, want to lead us in this one?
Well, this is a game that hasn't come out yet, but we know is coming out within the next few weeks. I am desperate to have Monster Hunter World on the Switch.
Yes. I actually, in the last episode, we were talking about the things we're anticipating for 2018. Definitely on my list was any Monster Hunter title. I would love to see any Monster Hunter come in, and Monster Hunter World does look gorgeous and awesome. And
Yes.
yeah.
Incredible.
Yes. For me, I just wanted to say Nidhogg. This is a game that when I realized I played this local multiplayer on one Vita. You know, I did the 2-player mode where each person shares half a Vita. Okay, that's so. If they made this for the Switch, where obviously it's easily a game that everyone could use. Share the joy mode. It's the little pixel graphics fencing game where you run for you're trying to not just stab your opponent, but then you run past them, try to get as far as you can to the other side so you can get eaten by a giant worm, and that's how you win. It was really fun, and I just think that it doesn't live up to its potential on the Vita. I think that people will take this game a lot more seriously, and it'll become more than a sleeper hit. It will become a competitive classic, I dare say, if they ever brought it over to the Switch eShop.
It'd become a awakened hit? I don't know. Instead of a sleeper hit?
Yeah,
whatever.
all right, I can see that. Oh, no, I see what you're doing there. No, that's pretty good. No, I think it was a brilliant, competitive, one-on-one game, and I think it would find a good home here. All right.
Absolutely.
I'm going to close this out here. Just want to thank everybody for listening and thank everybody who has backed us on Patreon. We keep this show ad-free because you guys are there to support us, and we don't beholden this show to anybody. So thank you guys. And if you want to help us keep this show ad-free and support everything we do, go to patreon.com/theswitchcast. There's also a link in the show notes. You can pledge $1 a month, $5 a month, whatever you feel like, to keep us going, and there's some rewards that we send out to our backers as a little thanks for doing so. There's also a few little pieces of extra content that only go out to our backers. Of course, you could also support us by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Yes, so speaking of which, I definitely want to plug our Discord chats. We have an amazing community of active, friendly, non-trolly people. So please join us. We're very friendly there. On the same note, join our Facebook group. We're also really friendly and open there as well. And check us out on Twitter. That's twitter.com/theswitchcast.
Thank you, HeatleyBros, for our theme music.
And until next time,
switch it up.
bomb cyclone. You'll get caught up in the bomb cyclone.